Hey everybody, Mr. Dustin here. Welcome to Bible class. And actually today, my Bible class buddy has joined me. Sometimes it's not worth fighting him. Anyway, hope you're doing well. So I want to remind you what we talked about on Sunday. If you remember, we were in Acts chapter 12, and we went through verse 1 through 11. And in those verses, what we talked about was how Herod, he was starting to really persecute the church. And he had James, the brother of John, he had him arrested and he had him put to death. He saw that pleased the Jews, so he arrested Peter too, and he was planning to put him on trial after the Passover. Now, Peter went to jail, and he was guarded, it says, by 4 squads of 4 soldiers each. And during the night, before his trial, an angel came, poked him on the side, and he said, "Hey, get up, follow me." And so he took Peter out of prison. Peter thought he was seeing a vision. But once they went the length of a street, the angel left, and Peter realized, now I know God has delivered me from this. So that's what happened on Sunday, and we were talking about those things. The critical verse, verse 5. But the church was earnestly praying for Peter. So with that in mind, I want to go from there and let's look at the next part of this story. We're going to start in verse 12. So chapter 12, verse 12 through 19. Let's read that together. When this had dawned on him that he was free, that God had rescued him, Peter, he went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, also called Mark, where many had gathered and were praying. Peter knocked at the outer entrance, and a servant named Rhoda came to answer the door. When she recognized Peter's voice, she was so overjoyed she ran back without opening the door and exclaimed, "Peter is at the door!" "You're out of your mind," they told her. When she kept insisting that it was so, they said, "It must be his angel." But Peter kept on knocking. When they opened the door and saw him, they were astonished. Peter motioned with his hand for them to be quiet and described how the Lord had brought him out of prison. "Tell James and the other brothers and sisters about this," he said, and then he left for another place. In the morning, there was no small commotion among the soldiers as to what had become of Peter. After Herod had a thorough search made for him and did not find him, he cross-examined the guards in order that they be executed. Now, what happened? I want to ask you to, I think we did this on Sunday as well, I want to ask you to retell that story in your own words and think about these things. Why was it that Rhoda left the door closed? And why did the church say, "You're out of your mind"? So retell the story to somebody that's there with you, preferably your family, and then answer that question. Why was Rhoda so surprised and startled that she left the door closed, and why did the church think she was out of her mind? And then we'll come and talk some more. To answer the question, I'm reminded of another story. It was back whenever the disciples had the news delivered to them that the tomb was found empty. There were the women. They had gone to the tomb and they saw this empty tomb, and they came back and told the disciples, and the disciples, they just didn't believe it. They had to go and see for themselves. So that's kind of what happened here. It's very similar to this situation. If let's read that actually. This is Luke 24, 9 through 12. It says, when they came back from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and to all the others. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and others with them who told this to the apostles. But they did not believe the women, because their words seemed to them like nonsense. Peter, however, got up and ran to the tomb. Bending over, he saw the strips of linen lying by themselves, and he went away wondering to himself what had happened. So again, at the news of the resurrection of Jesus, what happened? They didn't believe. Peter, the man who's now on trial and just released from prison, He's knocking at the door in this story. But he was the one that ran to the tomb to see, was this true or not? And I think it's interesting to know that the believers, they've been told what God will do, and they still did not believe that the tomb was found empty. And even Thomas, if you remember Thomas, he said, "Unless I see with my eyes, I will never believe." I think it's interesting. There's something about God answering prayer in such mighty ways, or doing what he said he would do in seemingly impossible circumstances, that causes us believers sometimes to doubt what had happened. Many times we try to find a natural explanation for things happening the way they did, so we unintentionally can remove God from the scenario. And I think as a church, we absolutely need to be praying for people, and we need to pray believing that God can actually intervene. Jesus, he spoke about this. Matthew 21, verse 18 through 22, this idea, one of those things he said there, if you have faith and do not doubt, not only can you do what was done to the fig tree, but also you can say to this mountain, go throw yourself into the sea, and it will be done. That sounds impossible. How could a mountain throw itself into the sea? It's impossible, right? Yet God, through Jesus, he told us that if we have faith that this will happen, it can happen, but only through his doing. So now I want to talk about this story just a little bit more from Acts chapter 12. How many soldiers did Herod put to guard Peter? This is in verses 4 through 6. How many did he use? It says squads of 4 soldiers, and there were 4 squads. So 4 squads of 4 soldiers, multiplication means there were 16 soldiers that were guarding Peter. And then in the prison, what was the situation? It says Peter was chained to how many? 2 soldiers. And then outside of the door, there were 2 soldiers standing guard. And I think the idea was there were 4 men working 4 shifts. So there were 2 chained to him and 2 outside the door, and then the next 4 would come. So there were around the clock at least 4 men guarding Peter. That's a lot of soldiers to guard 1 man. My question is, why do you think Herod chose 4 squads of 4 soldiers to guard 1 man? Why would he do that? I think, maybe I should say, I wonder, if Herod had the idea that Peter's God, the God that you and I believe in, might intervene here. There have already been a couple of what we might call prison breaks from the Christians already. One of them, let's look at this one, Acts chapter 5, 17 through 21. Then the high priest and all his associates who were members of the party of the Sadducees were filled with jealousy. They arrested the apostles and put them in the public jail. But during the night, an angel of the Lord opened the doors of the jail and brought them out. Go stand in the temple courts, he said, and tell the people all about this new life. At daybreak, they entered the temple courts as they had been told and began to teach the people. Then, when the high priest and his associates arrived, they called together the Sanhedrin, the full assembly of the elders of Israel, and sent to the jail for the apostles. They didn't even know that they had been let out of jail, but they had been. An angel of the Lord during the night, sounds kind of similar to what happened with Peter, came and let them escape. There seems to be something about locking up Christians that doesn't always work. So maybe Herod knew that, and maybe he expected that it was possible for Peter to escape, so he put all these ridiculous level of safety measures in place to try to keep him in prison. And as I think about that, it almost sounds like Herod may have expected that Peter could escape from prison by God's deliverance. more than the church did. Because Herod put extra safety measures in place, and when Peter did escape, the church thought it was so unlikely that they told Rhoda she was out of her mind. Even though they were praying for that very thing, that Peter would get out, they hardly believed that it actually happened. And I think there's a lesson there for us today. Many times we pray and we have a hard time believing that God is going to intervene. And I know personally, sometimes God says no, and that's difficult. And so sometimes it gets difficult to believe that he is going to intervene. But the God of the Bible is the God of today, and he can do impressive things, sometimes the seeming impossible. Now, today, we have a reenactment script, and I'll leave a link for it in the description of this video so you can access it. But part of the deal of this is an experience, that you can experience the Bible story and not just hear it. So I invited about 6 or 7 of my friends that I have grown up with over to participate in this script as well. And it is my goal that you will hear this and that you will remember God's word. So I hope that you can learn from this. So watch this and we'll talk just a little bit more. King Herod arrested some who belonged to the church and was going to persecute them. King Herod had James, the brother of John, put to death with the sword. King Herod saw that the Jews approved. He said, "Arrest Peter too and put him in prison." Herod put him in prison and handed him over to be guarded by 16 soldiers. "I want to put Peter on trial after the Passover." But the church said, "While Peter is in prison, we need to pray to God for him." The night before the trial, Peter was sleeping between 2 soldiers, bound in chains and with soldiers guarding the prison entrance. An angel of the Lord appeared. "Quick, get up." After the angel spoke, the chain fell off of Peter's wrists. "Get dressed, put on your sandals, put your coat on, and follow me." Following the angel, Peter left the prison. However, he did not realize the angel was leading him out of prison. He thought he was seeing a vision. They passed the first and second guards and came to the iron gate leading to the city. After leaving the prison, they went the length of 1 street and the angel left. "Now I know without a doubt that the Lord has sent his angel to rescue me from Herod and from everything the Jews expected." Peter went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, also called Mark, where many people were gathered to pray. Peter knocked on the door. A servant girl named Rhoda answered the door. "Who's there?" "It's Peter." When she recognized him, she recognized his voice. She was so happy that she ran back without opening the door. "Peter is at the door." "You're out of your mind." "No, really, Peter is at the door." Peter was still knocking. "No, Peter is in jail with 16 soldiers watching him." "No, Peter is at the door." "Well, it must be his angel." Peter kept knocking, and when they opened the door and saw him, they were so happy. "Peter!" "Shh. The Lord brought me out of prison. Tell James and the brothers and sisters about this." Then Peter left for another place. The next morning, The soldiers did not know what happened to Peter and how he got out of prison. How did Peter escape? We don't know. There were 16 of us guarding him, and 2 of us were chained next to him while we slept last night. I'll have people out looking for Peter. When Peter was not found, Herod talked to the guards and had them put to death. The important thing that I want you to remember about this is God, the God that we serve, the God of the Bible, can do the seemingly impossible. And it's important for us to pray to him. And he hears us and he acts. It doesn't always look like we expect. And I think that's what happened with the church in this story. But he does hear and he does answer, because we serve a living God. I hope that I will see you again on Sunday, and I hope that you will remember what happened to Peter. I'll see you then.